Hi there, my name's Ollie from Spectre Studios. Today we'll be going through how to make a Wasteland base for your miniatures. What you're going to need is some AK rough texture diorama. You can get this from any sort of decent hobby store. Some sort of texture spreader, doesn't necessarily need to be the Citadel one that I've got. You'll obviously need your base and then just some cork. So I ended up getting my cork from just Bunnings, which is a local store here in Australia. It comes in sort of sheets of tiles. You can glue it all together with some super glue, or in my case I've got some Zap-A-Gap CA Medium Plus. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and put a dab of glue on the base there where I want my cork to sit. Decent dollop, I mean, you can't really use too much, just don't glue your fingers to the base. Find the bits that you want to put on there and go ahead and stick them down. This is a fairly thick piece of cork. I'll probably put a link in the description for you guys as to what I actually got. Broke up some smaller bits because I like to layer them up just a little bit, because rock formations don't have flat tops 9 out of 10 times. So better just to make it as realistic as you can possibly figure out. Let's push them on there. Happy with that. So this stuff here, I think I got it for about 30 bucks online. I've had it for ages. It lasts significantly longer than any of the GW texture paints, and it's a one size fits all. The only thing is you'll need to paint it when you're done with it. It's sort of not ready to go straight out of the thing. As you can see, there's heaps of clumps of texture on there, which will give you the dirt or the rockiness appearance of your base that you're after. So let's grab a reasonable dollop of that, experiment sort of how much you want to use, and then I'll just go ahead and spread it around the base. Running it up just a little bit at the side of the cork just so that it joins in and everything looks nice and uniform. But I'm sort of just careful not to cover the rock in it, because I want two distinctly different textures on the base there. If you add too much, you can always remove some. If you don't add enough, then obviously you just grab another dollop and go around. Don't have to be particularly careful with being neat at this step. You can easily clean it up, as you'll see that I do on my next step there. Okay, there you go. You can see that I wasn't very neat, so we'll clean that up now with a piece of paper towel. Or, I mean, you can use your finger if you want to. Just have somewhere to clean your hands after you're done. I'll just run that around the rim of the base. Nice uniform edges there. And it'll take a little bit of time to dry. Feel free to leave it for as long as you want. I probably wouldn't leave it any less than an hour, but just go ahead and test it with your finger before you move on to the next step. Priming it. Look, you can obviously prime it however you want to. However you prime your miniatures, do this in the same way. I generally mount my miniature to it before I go ahead and do it, but I've got the base here on its own just so that I can go ahead and show you guys. So I'll end up spraying this one with the Rust-Oleum rattle can that I got from Bunnings, but you can use your airbrush as well if you want to. Just get good coverage. Alright, now that we're primed, let's get some brown down. Any medium brown will work. You can see I've got a bunch of different ones there for you. In this case, I'm just going to use the Vallejo Burnt Umber Model Air colour. I feel like it's got reasonable coverage out of the bottle, and it will seep into all those nice little nooks and crannies that you want it to. As you can see, I'm trying to find my brush. Alright, here we go. I've just got a dollop of that on my palette. I'll go ahead and just start spreading it around. You don't have to take your time, you don't have to be neat. It really doesn't matter if you get any on the rock. Just go ahead and get really good coverage. And I know that Duncan Rhodes will probably have my head for this, but you can put on a thick coat if you want to. It's really not going to make too much difference. All the text you can get on the base, the better. I've spoken to some people, they obviously decide to add things like barbed wire, or if they want to add skulls and bits and pieces like that to the base. You definitely can. I'd probably suggest adding those little bits and bobs before you lay down your texture paint. But if you decide to do it after, you can. Just keep in mind that you'll need to be careful trying to make it adhere to the diorama stuff. Alright, so first bit is done. You can see that I've accidentally gone ahead and started to paint the rock there, but grab yourself a medium grey colour. Mechanica Standard Grey does a good job, but sort of any neutral grey will get the job done. Go ahead and base paint your rock. Now you're probably thinking, Ollie, I'm going to have a really hard line between my greys and my browns here. Don't worry, we're going to hit it with a pretty hard coverage of a wash in a minute, which is going to solve all of that issue. But you'll also notice shortly here I'll tidy up a few lines with a bit more of that brown that's still on my palette from earlier. Now, because cork is a particular, a very recognizable color, if your primer for whatever reason hasn't seeped into all the kind of little holes that are in there, just get your grey in there and really try and cover up all of the, that brown corky color, because it's going to ruin the effect in the long run there. I'm just trying to be as neat as possible. What you don't want is to get any of that grey onto the brown, because that's going to ruin your effect. Okay, that's all looking pretty good at this stage. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with the grey at this point. Go ahead, clean my brush. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that burnt umber that I was using before. Try and merge the colours just that little bit more. Now you don't necessarily need to do this by brush. If you want to do it by airbrush, you absolutely can, to sort of sort out your trigger control when you're getting up close to that rock, to make sure that the colours don't bleed together too much. But yeah, you can use any medium brown here, just try and use the same one from your first step. That'd be my only advice to you. So I'm just trying to aim it into bits and pieces of the rock, probably the underside or crevices and things where you'd think naturally the dust and dirt would appear on your miniature. If you want to make it as realistic looking as you can, I mean, jump onto Google and Google yourself rocks, see where the brown and the red dirt collect on sort of the more grey slate coloured rocks. But again, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're basing miniatures here. Like I said, in the next stage, when we start to shade it all down, it will all really merge together as one colour. Alright, now that that's all dry, let's go ahead and give this a healthy coverage of Agrax Earthshade from Citadel Colour. This has got to be my favourite shade. Null and Oil's good too, but Agrax Earthshade does some serious work. If you don't have the Citadel version, you can absolutely use Army Painter's, I believe it's Strong Tone is their brown, but any decent acrylic wash will get it done. If you don't have any brown wash, find some brown paint, some dark brown paint, water it down heaps, make yourself a wash. There are heaps of videos on YouTube out there telling you how to make washes out of acrylic paint. Don't see why you couldn't do this with an oil paint as well, for those of you that like to do your washes with oil paints. Just keep in mind that we want to have a really decent coverage here, and given the amount of coverage that we're doing, your oil washes are going to take a long time to dry. So I'd probably just suggest sticking to the Agrax Earthshade. So I've absolutely drowned this. It's because I want to make the darks really quite dark and the lights really quite light. The next stage is what's going to make this base take its form, I think. Alright, so that looks, it looks awful to be honest at the moment, but it's going to be the next couple of steps that make it look better. First step is going to be a dry brush. Because that Diorama Series AK product that we use to base it has so much texture to it, the Terminator Stone here from Citadel Colour is going to pick out everything. I've got myself a makeup brush here. I think it was like $4, again from a local store here in Australia called Kmart. Definitely recommend it, it's been fantastic. The tip here is get as much of it as possible off your brush. Right now I'm just working it into all the bristles, making sure that the brush is effectively loaded. I've got a little bit of texture on my palette there, trying to get a bit more paint off it. I probably still have a little bit too much paint on there, but I tested on the side of the base. But then I just go ahead and very lightly try and pick out some of that texture on the top there, moving my way around the base. Doesn't really matter so much which way that you pull your brush. It's not like we're dry brushing the power armor of a Space Marine. We're literally just trying to get some random lines from the base. And nature is quite random, so go ahead and, you know, be as rough with it as you want, but try not to leave too much of that dry paint behind. We still want to preserve, if you will, all of the darkness in the recesses. You could go a next step here and pop some I don't know, white paint or a light grey paint over the rock, but I find that the Terminator stone unifies the effect. And the Mechanica standard grey that's already there and the brown that's already there on the bottom of the base will do all the work that you need it to do. This is the fun bit, pigments. I've got just a series of pigments here, ranging from kind of an orangey brown colour to a quite desaturated brown and then a couple of yellows. And I'll tend to layer these up as I go. This is messy, so don't do it outside. Do it inside with no fans going, and put yourself a little piece of paper towel down to catch the excess. You can use pigments sparingly, or you can really load them up like I do here. I'm a huge fan of that really dusty look, so I tend to use quite a lot on my bases. You can see here I just grab an old synthetic brush with really awful bristles. I go ahead and just try and put this all over the bit where I want the red dirt to be. But then on the rock, I just try and put it on, again, the crevices and the underside of the rocks, where I would expect naturally the dust would build up as the wind blows through. Don't cover the entire rock because you're just going to have a red base. You want to leave some of that original colour showing that we painted in. Once you're happy with the placement of your pigment, just go ahead and work it into the base. You can see there that the dark is still preserved in the bottom, and then some of our dry brushing work that we did before is preserved as well. Next step, I just go ahead and grab my neutral desaturated earth colour. I think it's, actually I can't remember what it's called. There you go, European Earth from Vallejo Pigments, and I just dot it where I think it's going to go. I don't want it to cover the whole base. I just sort of want to work it into just some random spots to give it a differential of tones. Now that will naturally blend in with the red dirt that I've got before to make this a bit more wastelandy. You can cover more or less of the red dirt as you see fit to make it more arid or a bit more deserty, depending on what you want it to do. To add a bit of vibrancy to the base, I grab a kind of a mid-yellow, kind of off-yellow colour. I think this is like a natural sienna. And then again, I'll just stipple that back into the top of the base. Sorry about my hand placement. You can tell this is my first YouTube tutorial. So now this is looking quite good. And then I'll just grab some light sand from SMS. They're fantastic pigment as well. And just the price, I think it was $5 Australian to get a whole tub of that sort of stuff. Couldn't recommend them more. I try and overlap it as well with the red, the yellow and the brown that I've used, to try and give it as much differential as I possibly can. And you can still see that I'm trying to keep as much as I can that rock intact. It's got a little bit of the pigment going up the sides, but all in all, really not too much. As you would have your miniature on here prior to this point, you would also pull some of that pigment up their legs to show that they've been trudging through that dirt as well. This is probably the one thing that's going to upset most people. Some people like to lock their pigments in with some isopropyl alcohol or some sort of matte varnish or something just to really lock it in there. I don't like to do that, only because I really like the dusty look. And I'm just going to warn you in advance, these bases are not going to stand up to punishment on the tabletop day in, day out. These are really more for display stuff. So I would suggest that if you do want to do a lot of tabletop gaming, see how it goes. It might end up being fine. But if you're finding that the pigment's falling off your models, you may need to lock it in with a bit of isopropyl alcohol or something else. It will knock the shine off, so feel free to go back in with a bit more of the dust to bring back that look, but that's how you're going to preserve it. I'll finish it up with a black, bit of black paint around the rim of the base, and we're done. I think it looks pretty amazing, and you'll see here just a clip of my Space Marine Reaver that's on a base done the exact same way, just without that rock. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. Have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one.